And a little push when we first started the club, a little push, they tried to set us down or quiet us, but we rose above them, and obviously they really don't have the right to say, no, you can't do that just because it's a political club. But I say it's so sad because you speak to most high school students, even college students, and they just don't care. People don't realize that it really
you live in a
your
democratic country, and
that's exactly right. And we have every right, if we think something's wrong, get a group together. You have the right to petition, you have the right to protest. All these things that people don't really take the advantage of because either they haven't been educated or they just don't believe they can make a difference. And it's sad to see. There are even friends that I have that think, oh, well, politics are stupid, you know, you don't really have a say with the Electoral College and the way that system works. But I saw, for example, when we were working with Nan Hayworth in the independence primary, and I went to the polls at the middle school, and it was 8 votes to 7. So that went to Nan Hayworth, right, to her for the independence line, but it was 1 vote.
Yeah,
that's one
what
person
that
made
really
the difference.
Is so scary about today's world in political process. When people are not showing interest, then who controls it? It becomes a very small faction.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's the so-called activist. Then you throw in the democracy out of the window.
Exactly. And like I said, it's just students don't realize you can make such a big difference. And it was very fun helping out Dr. Hayworth, just because that independence line, which was a few weeks ago, that she won, but it came down to the hundreds or the thousands, not millions, not huge numbers. It came down to those small numbers. So everything that we did going up to that primary and then going to get the numbers at the polls, it was all just such an adrenaline rush because we knew it would be so close and it all really mattered. But that's just another example on a smaller scale that really every single vote counts. You may not think it does, but it really doesn't. It's our government. It's a government by the people, for the people. So we should all have a say. We should all be educated, and we should all know by the high school and college ages that it's very, very important and vital to our society's success that we take part and really learn about it.
So since the club is only formed in March, you have not really experienced through a election process yet.
No,
right?
No, we haven't.
So the coming one in November, is the club interested in or intend to support the candidates by, say, engaging in a door-to-door, passing out information, engage people to talk?
Certainly. We've started a little bit of work already, and like you said, we're trying to hold off to really get out there and back one.
Certainly have to wait after the primary.
Exactly, exactly. We're trying to wait back until the primary so we have our clear-cut candidate. Of course, as a new group, we don't want to make any enemies. We're all for a common goal. So we're trying to hold back until the primary, and that's when we'll make our big push and really help out, another candidate, make a name for ourselves, and really get out there, and because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
And right, the primary 2 candidates, right?
Right.
Bob Castelli and Terrence Murphy, right? Okay. Yeah, those 2 actually, I know them both, and they're all fine gentlemen, and they have a different background, different experience. But as far as Republican principles, I think they pretty close. So the question now really is, people have to judge for themselves who has, either from an ability point of view or effectiveness in influencing the Albany. As you know, Albany is not a Republican city or state government, right?
Right. We've had the opportunity, like I said, with the bake sales, to reach out and speak with Dr. Murphy, and we'd certainly love to have the chance to sit down and talk with Mr. Castelli. I mean, just getting to know these people, and even if it's not Terrence or it's not Bob, just getting to know who's going to be.
You should contact both of their campaign offices, at least let them know you are there. Bob was interviewed at this program and a few weeks ago, and I think it's being shown, actually aired in over summers. So by all means, contact every office, and particularly summertime. I know you're busy, but I don't know whether everybody, your club members, are all busy. Sometimes this is the most significant thing to do.
Right, and just getting to know these people, because hopefully, what we hope is one of these two men is going to be representing us up in Albany.
Yeah, that's all ultimate goal.
Exactly.
Eventually, is after the primary is over, that's where really they call the rubber meets the road, and you have to
right.
running.
So hopefully now, before everything gets crazy and we have that one person we're pushing for, hopefully we can get to know them both, and really learn about their principles, and not pick a side yet. But like I said, just get to know these people that hopefully will be to be our voice up in Albany.
All right. Another thing then about club. Usually, a club does maintain a certain activities at school, particularly if you want more students to be interested, involved, grow your membership. What do you plan to do, say, starting fall?
Well, starting in the fall, like we just discussed, it'll be a big time with all these primaries coming up and elections will be coming by. So that'll be our main focus right there, helping out other candidates and getting out. We also hope, we were looking at the Republican National Convention. It may be a little early to go this year, but we're really pushing to try to do something like that, because that'll just be a fantastic experience, another opportunity to meet some amazing people and hopefully some other groups.
Yeah. Certainly in a year of a presidential election, you'll be more excited in pursuing that process. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. But for right now, it's all about helping out these candidates when they need it. So we don't necessarily have a defined calendar yet, but certainly.
But you had some speaker, like you invited Terrence and others.
That's right.
So
that's right.
When coming September, you still can invite some speakers,
and that's what we're going to try to do for our meetings. Some of them will come together and discuss some issues, so we can all really learn about each other's views and see some other perspectives if there are any. But also bring in some speakers, because it's awesome to get to know these people and really learn who they are and see if we like them, and hopefully be able to support them.
Good. Yeah, and if you want to invite a speaker from the Somers Republican Club, I can recommend for you somebody. I'm serving as the president this year, and we have a number of members, lawyers, and they love to speak. Any opportunity to speak, they'll be interested.
Yeah, we'd certainly
keep that in mind.
We'd love to have them, definitely.
Right. Now, we sort of talked mostly about the local issues and so on, but as you know, we are not too sort of early to talk about the national presidential election, right? Are you putting that kind of issue on your sort of club activities? People debate or even do some research on who is the better candidate to represent Republicans in the presidential election?
Well, right now we're starting to look around, and one name that's come to mind for us, because our advisor is a big fan of him, Dr. Ben Carson, who is the head neurosurgeon, I believe, at Johns Hopkins for many years. And obviously he's a brilliant mind. But interestingly enough,
not probably too well known though.
Not very well known. But so he came out to be this amazingly successful person, but he came from poverty. He was raised by a single mother. It was him and his brother. And she never accepted food stamps, never accepted welfare, none of that. She was illiterate, and she actually took advantage of the amazing library systems that we have, the public library systems, and she would have them, I believe it was by middle school, she made them read 2 books a week. She'd have them write reports on the books, and of course she was still illiterate at the time, so she would look at them with a red pen, as I saw him describing it, and she would circle words and just write random check marks, which was kind of funny, but then she'd send them to the libraries, Of course, a system funded by the government,
Yep.
and she'd have the librarians look over it. And it's just very interesting to see that different perspective from someone who has come from
very
poverty.
heroic sort of life.
That's right. And you always hear, oh, well, the Republican Party doesn't want everyone to succeed and that kind of thing. But to see someone who has come from nothing to become this very inspirational and successful person, it's very, very amazing to hear them say, you know what? If you're not doing the best, you have to get up and you have to go find a job and you have to do something.
That's the principle sometimes differentiate Republican, Democrat in some sense.
Right.
Whether you encourage people to take initiative, or you are providing sort of a negative incentive in a sense.
Right, because he certainly understands. He's a brilliant mind, as I said. He certainly understands. If you're just feeding people money for not working, not doing anything, well, why would you go out?
It's a negative incentive part is the real, I think this country should worry about, because without incentive, I don't think the human society can make progress.
That's right. And why would I, for example, why would I even get a college education and go out and get a job when I could just be handed a check every month?
That scary thing is that if people start looking at all the statistics to show that, okay, when people are getting welfare and so on an average per year, you get this much money, and if you work and you pay taxes, you get this much money, and then people say, wow.
Why should I even work?
That's negative incentive right there. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And not to mention, the cost of a college education is getting very high. And now there was something that actually Governor Cuomo proposed, that they should let inmates, convicted prisoners, get, I think it was like up to $5,000 of college education. Now he's thinking to get them back on their feet. But this is coming out of the taxpayer's pocket, So
no, there are many ways of giving people, sort of encourage people to sort of learn and so on.
Exactly.
I don't know necessarily have to be through money. I think just you mentioned this public library system is helpful to people who want to learn.
Certainly.
I'm sure our prison system is very good in terms of providing you stuff, books you want to read and things you want to do.
That's exactly right.
No issue with that at all.
That's exactly right. There's no issue with that, but when you start taking money out of the taxpayers' pockets to try to give someone a college education for free, that's been convicted for doing something wrong.
Even that, if you administer it in the proper way, there is a selection process and so forth. If you do a blank, provision, it's just like welfare, same,
Another negative incentive. Well, why don't I go to jail for whatever just to get, But that's how some people can start to think if you start implementing these things. And if anyone were able to understand how we can do this without, say, handing out money, I believe it would be Dr. Ben Carson, because he's lived through it and he's learned how to become successful on his own accord.
But Ben Carson probably at this point, very remotely to be even a candidate, right? This is Kathy sort of mentioned to you,
right? Yeah, it would be
she might be her idol, but I don't know how many people actually think that she would even consider.
It would be it would be hard, but it's someone that, at the very least, even if he isn't necessarily a presidential candidate, it's someone that myself and I think the group as a whole really agrees with his principles and how he addresses things.
This is very interesting. A little bit far-fetched, perhaps, but it's not totally impossible for a political, club of young people actually start a drafting process to draft a candidate. That would be amazing if that ever happened and succeeded. I mean, in the old-fashioned, before the so-called democratic process and everybody democratic, people actually all volunteer to run for position and so forth. But in older fashion, before this whole democracy really becomes a sort of everybody's words, people actually are very reserved. They are not coming forward to take up a position or wants to be serve a position. They usually reserve, and people have to draft them. Draft them in a sense. People want to, really request and beg, please come to serve. We want you. We really believe you can, help and so on. That process, the so-called drafting process, it's gone. I mean, literally. But it's in the party system now. It's backdoor. Backdoor in a sense, the party chiefs and committees and behind the door says, oh, okay, this state, this guy, this. I mean, that's not called drafting, in my opinion, okay? Right. I mean, even though I'm a party member, so on, and people will say, hey, that's not correct in a political statement. But I don't mind saying that because I feel there is a genuine drafting process, a very honorable one, that when people really come knocking on the door and say, Mister, we really believe you could serve this position, you can help the county, the state, the government, and so on. And if that happened, then I'm sure the election process, later on the service that the candidate is offering, I think will have a higher quality.
And I agree with you, but what's very interesting is with Dr. Carson. He was actually very reserved about coming out and trying to make a run.
That's why I say. Yeah.
And there's a website, I believe it's runbenrun.org.
Yeah.
And they have been getting signatures to try to give him another push, to try to get out there and run. So it's interesting that you bring that up, but I really do agree. Because now not only do you kind of do away with these people that maybe want to do it to get their names out there, or that kind of thing. You get a person that already has a group of people that believe in them and agree with their principles and know that they can do the right thing and be successful and so on and so forth. So that's a really interesting thing. And when you think back to the Founding Fathers...
Oh, those days, this drafting is genuine.
That's exactly right. And, when you look at the Constitution, right, there are so many things that when you look back, well, maybe they meant something else. And like you said, with the drafting, I think that's one of those things that they intended and believed would continue up until 2015 or 2014. And unfortunately, we've kind of lost touch with it.
No, I think that's why I said before, it's not totally impossible that for young organizations to begin this process, and particularly nowadays that the communication technology is so advanced, it doesn't really require, so to speak, tons of money. All right. So perhaps your club or you work with other young Republican club, and start a drafting process, and as a truly grassroots, okay, and through Twitter, or Facebook, or whatever means, to encourage some genuine, really good statesmen, okay, to be drafted. I mean, if that happens, I personally believe the party, if that kind of candidate is serviced, it will have a tremendous power in the national election, against another party. Because if this party process is a genuine drafting process,
it'd be very interesting to see if that's possible. And unfortunately, I think in today's day and age, when you look at the money aspect of it, and getting commercials and all this kind of thing, it would be very hard to pull off. But like you said, I think it would be just an amazing thing to see.
Don't say
happen.
Hard to pull off. I think that's not a good attitude. I don't think it's that hard, okay? I mean, look, you got 20 members, let's say. If you are able to say, well, each person, you're going to focus on getting 100, Republican, let's just say, which is limited to one party. And you multiply that. And 100, let's say, through email, is not that big a deal. And the 100 multiply doesn't take a couple of times to multiply to the American population. right?
That's really
So
interesting way to look at it.
it's really is something that you have to have rationale behind that is acceptable. Right? People already knew today the election process become money problem, and that the party system supposedly to draft good people, it becomes actually, it's not a drafting, rather anti-drafting in a sense, because we had too many volunteer candidates that with money, and the party has to decide which one, to sort of take. Sometimes they spend more energy to stop candidates rather than drafting candidates. You see what I mean?
Yeah, certainly. And it's,
And that's not healthy, because when you say you put your energy to stop candidates, how would that really unite a political organization or whole election process? It's dividing, it's not uniting.
And that's such a new perspective. That's really something that I've never thought about and has never come to mind, but it's such a new perspective. And hopefully in the coming years, maybe we can make that change. And maybe as the group of new younger people and new voters and the next generation, maybe that's a change we can try to make.
If you, on your grass level, if you start to say, well, let's get in touch with Yorktown Young Republican Club and Yonkers and so on, that's New York area, and maybe even go upstate, you'll see whether Syracuse or Binghamton or some places start having this kind of a connection, and keep one single issue. Say, all right, 2014 presidential election. Can we influence that process by drafting a candidate of our choice? Right? This doesn't take much sort of a really money in a sense that, okay, let's say we tabulate 100 names. That's just names that we search, as you say. They have website, they have other social media and people's comments about a person, so on and so forth. You can, even today, even can get people's background through a criminal check. So it's not difficult to find people, right? Then you pass around, let the young clubs people to say, debate on, oh, I like this guy, I like this. Then put this into a poll. Online poll is so easy to run. They don't cost you money.
Right.
You put in candidates in here, let people to, just type in and elect, and then you see the bar changing, and say, now this bar is growing. So over a month or two, you might get the whole, state start, surfacing, selecting 1, 2, 3, names. And then you may even go beyond state and eventually become a drafting process. You don't even have to have the candidate sort of a blessing to start this whole process, right? But by the time you have a momentum, and people definitely will have different, thinking. I mean, I don't know about when George Washington, of course, was elected, because the circumstance, everything is very different. But after that and so on, the president election and so on, it has that element in it, okay? And I always, sort of wonder in the old days, this David Crocker, whatever, didn't want to serve the Congress, have to be, sort of dragged into it. That's all gone.
Right. It's very far gone.
Yeah.
Very far gone. Like you said, it's come down to right now with money and power. It's not necessarily your ideals or what you stand for.
It's ambition, not necessarily ideal. That's the problem. Now, ideal is out of the window because, somehow now, because the compromises that a person has to make to, trade principles away, So this is some process we really have to think about. And if you look at the world situation, we, democratic country, we try to encourage other countries to become democratic.
Of course.
But that end result, at this point at least, I don't see so glorious sort of results, okay? many so-called democratic countries, their process, you know, I don't see any real shining spot there. Okay, sometimes actually lead the country into a chaos. Okay, so really, I mean, we are touching upon a very significant point. I just hope, you know, when you go back to your club and talk to other people, see what they feel about it.
Definitely, and like you said, in the age of social media, something like that maybe 20 years ago might have been very hard to do. You know, it might have been.
Yep.
But today, like you said, an email or a tweet or a Facebook post, something like that,
Yep.
and the whole world can see it.
Yep. Yep.
So it's an interesting subject, and maybe something that we can try to make a change.
Right. Right. So, do you have regular meeting with the club?
During the school year, we do. We were meeting every single Thursday, which maybe we'll
Every
change
week?
to- we were meeting
wow,
every week. Maybe we're going to try to change it to every other week, and you know, give some people a little bit of a break and not really become a burden.
Yep.
You know, but that's how often we were meeting. And now that the summer's come, we've slowed down. Our meetings have really just been through events that we've done. Although I think just before school, I want to try to get a meeting, get everyone together and regroup. And
You certainly have a good advisor. Kathy is a very enthusiastic person, and I have seen her in action, and I think you're lucky to have her.
Well, we
And
certainly are.
Yeah, hopefully you know, take advantage of the fact and make your club really vibrant.
I hope so, and like you said, enthusiastic. Oh my goodness, she's out there, and she's not really afraid to, you know, have herself heard, and she really is just
Okay,
a perfect.
we are running out of time. I'll give you a minute. Speak to the camera as if you're speaking to the student body and want to encourage them to join your club.
Okay. I wouldn't even say really to join necessarily our Republican club or a Democrat club, but the main point that I want to make is, as the young students and the future generations of tomorrow, the number one thing, the main key right now is to learn, to investigate, to become educated, because some may not be so interested in politics, but it is so important, and we are the people. We're making the decisions for the future.
Great.
That's really my message.
That's very good. Yeah, so, well, I think we have a great session, and you know, I hope you enjoyed listening to our young Republican Club member here. And stay tuned. In the summer, we will have more interviews with candidates. So, thank you for watching. Good night. Let's just say we're just limited to one party.
Okay.
And